can get started. So this session will be recorded, and we'll have clips and this whole session, this interview, uploaded on YouTube and social media. But first of all, very, very excited to have you all here today. Thank you all for coming to our sales mentality and storytelling panel with Carol and Amanda and myself. So perhaps we can start with some introductions. Carol, would you like to start?
Sure. So, first of all, thank you for having me, and thanks to everyone for being here. I'm Carol Malakassis, originally from Greece. I've been living in the States for the past 20 years, and I've been in sales for the past 12 years. I started as what I like to call an accidental founder. I co founded a beverage company in New York back in 2010, where we were distributing, manufacturing, and selling our product. The company got acquired about a year and a half in, and I've been in startups since 2013 as a founding member of several sales teams. I've had two exits, and in the past 2 years, I work with early stage pre-seed to Series A YC founders, teaching them how to sell.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. We're very excited to have you all here talking about, sales today. I'll go next. So, hey, everybody. I'm Jeremy, founder and CEO of Venue, and we create metaverse conference experiences. I think how I got in touch with Amanda and Carol is we're all part of the Y Combinator YC network, founder network. So we're part of YC Winter 21 batch. And very excited to hear what the experts here have to say on sales and learn something. Amanda, would you like to go next?
Sure. So it's great to meet you, everyone. I'm Amanda, and I'm one of the founders of Recall. We went through YC in Winter 20, and essentially what Recall does is it's basically one unified API for meeting integrations. So our goal is to allow you to integrate with different meeting providers like Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, and more, so you can serve your customers more quickly without having to waste engineering resources.
Awesome. Thank you all. And let's get right into it. Perhaps we could start with Amanda down on the couch here this way. How would you describe your sales process, or how would you define your sales mentality?
Sure. So, in terms of our sales process, how that works is we do cold emails for outbound. That's how we source our prospects. And from there, we basically have a initial call, which is a discovery call. If they're qualified, if we think that they're a fit for the product, we move to a demo. And from there, we get them on a pilot or a trial period. And after they try out the product, that's when they decide if they want to become a long-term customer.
Very cool. Actually, that's quite similar to our process as well. Carol, if you want to move up a little bit closer. But yeah, we also have a touch sequence that's fairly similar. Yeah, if you want to move a little closer up here. But we start with cold emails, email one, email twos, and then we also utilize LinkedIn. Our audience of event organizers and folks in the B2B world often respond fairly well, we found, on LinkedIn. And then our other strategy is rather than inviting them to come do a demo, it's kind of hard to invite folks to hop on a sales call or hop on a demo with us. Easier to invite them to say come to an event. So we sort of utilize that as well. Carol, what's been your experience in terms of startup touch sequences and what's worked better? Things folks should know.
Sure. So I think, before I hop into that, it's interesting what you just said, Jeremy, that it's hard to have people hop on a demo with us and,
Mhm.
we show them the platform. Well, the platform, the events platform we're on right now is essentially your demo, right? The
Yeah.
idea is what Amanda was just talking about. Are those prospects qualified? So when we're looking at sequences, when we're looking at a sales cadence, The four most important parts is number one, how do you do your outreach? As Amanda just mentioned, she does email. For you, it's LinkedIn. So the idea is, where do my customers live? Who's my ICP, my ideal client profile that I'm going after? What are their titles? What are the types of companies I'm targeting? What are their pain points? What's my unique value add? So that's the place to always start. How do I identify that? How do I find them? Step two is, how do I make sure that these people are willing, ready, and able to buy from me? Understanding their pain points, understanding timing, decision making process, budget, and need. After they're qualified, showing them a demo custom to the needs they communicated to me during that second part. And lastly, what's the right pricing? What are next steps? How do I close? So, high level, when looking at strategies in different sales process, those are the four core pieces to master.
Carol, yeah, and thank you for all that. I was wondering if we could rewind a bit to your first two steps here, and dig in deep here. One of the things that we struggle with is, how do we know if the folks that we're reaching out to, the different cohorts or the different industries or different roles, are the right ones to reach out to? What are the processes and methods to iterate and arrive at, oh, these are the right people to reach out to, right? So if we do A/B testing on different roles or different industries, right? And then also, uh, yeah, how would you sort of design that process?
It's a great question, and it's the most important part of a sales process. So, it all starts with a hypothesis, right? You build a product that you believe is solving a certain problem. So, as you go out and test the market, you're looking for signs. What is resonating with people? What are they responding well to? Are they understanding what I'm saying? And is there really a big problem, a big existing problem in the here and now, or as YC calls it, a hair on fire problem that I'm trying to solve? So, what we're looking for in those patterns to really see, is this customer the right one for me? Is there something here? I like to use a method called BAND, which Amanda is a master at this point, where essentially the BAND acronym stands for budget, authority, need, and timing. So the people I'm
Mm.
speaking to, do they have the budget for my solution or a budget allocated? Do they have the authority, or what does the decision making process look like for them? What are their needs or problems? How are they solving for those right now? And how does my solution fit into that? And lastly, what does timing look like? Is this a big problem that they're looking to solve right now? Or is this something that is not as important to them? And if those four boxes are checked, those are the patterns you're looking for to know whether that's someone you should be spending time with or not, and whether they're a good fit for the problem you're solving.
Thank you for that explanation. So band one more time: budget, uh,
Authority
authority, need, and what
and
was the
timing.
last one?
T for
Oh,
timing.
oh, timing. Got it. Amanda, would you feel comfortable sharing sort of what that, yeah, how that applies to you all? Just like an example. Could you give us an example of that, of one of your target people that you arrived at, customers?
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, I can give you an example of something that happened earlier today.
Oh,
So
wow.
going through the BANT qualification, we need to figure out if they have the budget for something like recall, first of all, because we do need to charge a certain amount to make it a viable business for us. The next thing is authority. We typically want to target someone that is higher up if they are a smaller company, like the CEO, or if they are at a larger company, like 100 above, then we want to talk to someone that is maybe VP level or above. Also, the need. They need to have a very clearly defined idea of why they want recall going in, because it doesn't make sense to try to convince them why they need it on the call. And
Oh,
timing is
yeah.
actually quite important for us, because we're a dev tool. It needs to be at the exact moment in which they're starting to build out something that uses our API. If they're looking, just window shopping or in the exploratory phase right now, it can also be difficult to convince them, hey, like, you need this right now. Typically, they should have the timing; they need it immediately.
So, and thank you for shining a light on that, Amanda. That's something that we've struggled with as well. We've had, inbound leads coming in, some with a greater need, some with, oh, I'm not sure what we might need this for. We're just sort of looking. And, we really stretch ourselves thin when we try to talk to everybody or give everybody a one-on-one demo that way. Whereas some folks, it may be better, maybe they have a less need. We just invite them to an event, right? The event is the demo, where some folks who have a pressing need, hair on fire need, right? We hop on that one-on-one call, give them a targeted demo. So Carol, I understand that in your talks, when you give talks on sales and when you do sales coaching, you have a point about storytelling. Could you help us understand, as founders, how we can utilize storytelling in sales and what's the impact? Why should people do it?
Absolutely. So, storytelling is how we've communicated with the world since the beginning of time. It's in our DNA. And people respond well to stories because it allows you to connect emotionally, not just by using logic and facts. So, I like to say that the founder of a company that knows the product so well and understands the possible solutions they're trying to give the market is the best person to become a chief storytelling officer. And essentially, storytelling is being a brand evangelist, talking about the product, talking about their vision, talking about their inspiration, talking about their journey. And uh it's not it's not just something that you use for selling. You can use storytelling to build your brand even before you're ready to sell, to build an audience. So when your product is ready, when your MVP is ready to launch, that audience is already there for you. You can use storytelling for fundraising. You can use it when you're selling to your first customers. You can use it when you're hiring. You can use it when you're speaking to the press. It's essentially you being the person, you being the evangelist of what you're building to inspire others to follow on that journey. And if you master it, it can really become a superpower and it never ends. And it's going to ever be changing and evolving the same way your company is.
Thank you. And at this point, I'd like to take a pause. If any folks in the audience have a specific question, we have a wealth of knowledge here on stage between Carol and Amanda here. If you want to maybe ask a question about, hey, how do I apply these sales skills, whether it's what we talked about with the process or the storytelling, into your specific business or use case, feel free to come on up. We can sort of make this more interactive. I personally would love to dive into that and understand the details. Okay, so it sounds like you need to tell a different story to a different type of audience. You mentioned telling stories to investors, telling stories to customers, telling stories to people who may not be customers but be part of your community, your audience, your champions, right? Before you even have a product. I'd love to understand the differences and also specifically maybe an example of what are the requirements for an effective story? And also, if folks have any questions, feel free to line up on the side of the stage. That way I'll know to call you up. Yeah, or perhaps Amanda, if you have an example of a way that you've utilized storytelling in your sales and marketing.
Yeah, for sure. So there are definitely different kinds of storytelling. For example, my co-founder, who fundraises, needs to utilize storytelling. But for sales, we tell a different type of story because an investor is different than a prospect. I think that what Carol said about really needing to be the evangelist for your product is exactly on point with that, because what we've started doing is we've started posting more content, which is essentially another form of storytelling. And that really helps bring people onto the journey so that when they are ready, when they do meet all the qualifications, they are already bought in and ready to buy because they've been following the story the entire time.
Interesting. That's really interesting because we've just recently begun putting more of a focus on uploading, say, YouTube content and blog content and social media content. Carol, based on your experience, yeah, what should folks know about these types of content generation to story build and community build? What works? How should people do it?
You know what it is, Jeremy, and I'm not trying to give you an overly simplistic answer. The biggest thing in all of this, in storytelling and selling and going to market, is just starting. The biggest thing that I see, especially with technical founders, is there's this perception that my product needs to be perfect, everything needs to be lined up for me to actually start. And that's the biggest mistake you can do because a lot of startups fail. Why? Because they never get to product market fit or because they run out of cash. So when you start to tell the story, when you start to sell, when you start to interact with your audience, you start to get signs of product market fit, or you get your first feedback to know if and when you need to pivot. And also from those first sales, you start getting cash flow. So it's not necessarily what types of content or on what different channels you're sharing that. It's just a matter of starting to create content, starting to figure out what is the value add, starting to figure out what your elevator pitch is, starting to figure out who your actual audience is. And of course, all of that will change as you go to market, but you want to really put yourself out there. So to your point before, if your clients live on LinkedIn, mine do as well, start on LinkedIn. If there's a big community that you're selling to that lives on Twitter, start there. There's Product Hunt, there's Hacker News, there's Bookface. There's so many places where people live. So it's not so much what you start sharing, it's just starting. And then as you start, you'll get the signs of what it is that your audience is actually interested in and what you should be focusing on.
Absolutely, and I want to tag along to that and say once you start, whether it's content generation or events, or it gets us as founders talking to our community, talking to people, and those people might be customers, those people might be partners, and once we start talking to them, we start getting a sense of what their needs and pain points were, and things like that. We start getting ideas, we start getting feedback, we start having the information we need to iterate and point ourselves in towards the direction of product market fit. So yeah, I think talking to people is one of the biggest things that founders need to keep in mind. One last question for everybody here on the panel. Speaking of stories, I'd love to hear a story that you think our audience should know regarding perhaps any sort of pivotal turning point, Carol, for maybe any either your own company or companies that you've coached, like a learning story.
Sorry, Jeremy, you broke up. I wasn't able to clearly hear what you said.
Oh, yeah, my internet cut out. But let me repeat the question. So speaking of storytelling, would love to hear from folks on the panel a story about any sort of like pivotal story that way we can sort of take some learning from around sales. Like Carol, either with your own company or companies you've coached, and Amanda with with your own company and your journey through YC and things like that. Yeah, a success story, a pitfall story, things that our audience should know.
Yeah, should I start?
Yeah, go for it, Carol.
The biggest success stories that I see are with founders that understand the importance of going to market, understand the importance of selling, and understand the importance of speaking to their customers. And again, because I mostly work with technical founders, there's this misconception that, oh, I built this great product, people will come. If I build it, they will come. And I can assure you from working in several companies, from being a founder myself, and from working with over 150 YC startups, that's not the case. So you see there's a mental switch and there's an actual switch in the future of the company when founders understand how important that is, and when they begin to really put themselves out there and starting to speak to their audience, it changes the trajectory of their business. So overall, that's a big theme that I can't stress enough how important it is. No matter at what stage you are, whether you're pre-seed or Series B, you should be falling in love with your customers because they are your only source of truth.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I couldn't agree more. Carol, that's a real problem And I'm wondering why you think that problem exists. Why do you think founders, when they start off, are inclined to build and then hope people will come? What do you think is the psychology behind that? That maybe if we're feeling that way, we can sort of get out of it, right? Is there a thought process here?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, uh, when you're a builder, right? When you're an engineer, when you're a developer, your natural skill set isn't to sell. You lack that sales intuition to really understand how to speak to customers and what they're looking for. That's step one. It doesn't come naturally, which is normal because that's not what you have experience in. But the biggest thing is that there's a lot of negative stereotypes around selling. And there's a fear of, oh, I'm going to be too pushy. I'm going to
Mm,
turn customers away. We have the stereotype of the used car salesperson in our heads, and we don't want to be that. So, the biggest solution to this is a mindset switch. In psychology, there's what we call a growth mindset and a limited mindset. So, the growth mindset says, I can learn. There are not certain traits I'm born with and that's it, or there's not talents I have versus ones that I don't. So, growth mindset allows you to go out and explore new things. And once you understand that sales is the lifeblood of my business, if I don't sell, my company will die sooner or later. And once you understand that there's no one better to actually sell than you at the early stage because no one has the product knowledge and industry expertise as you do, then you start to embrace it versus fear it. And of course, it's a process, and even Amanda can speak to that, when she started selling and where she is now. But I think it starts sort of to wrap up because it doesn't come naturally, because there are all those negative sales stereotypes that exist. And founders don't understand A, how important it can be, and B, how good they can actually be at it if they spend a little bit of time.
yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that's helped me is just being genuine, right? If I feel that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I feel like, oh, something is missing, something's not right, or the product isn't ready, but talking to customers is how we solve that problem. Then when I talk to people, I'm not going to say, oh, here's this perfect solution. No, I'm going to ask them, so what's your use case? How can we customize this for you? What do you need? What additional things do you need? We can add it in. So sort of just personally, if I sort of approach it genuinely, I'm able to get through that fear a little bit. Amanda, do you have a story for our audience of founders?
I think building off of what Carol said, so we actually, before building Recall, and obviously before working with Carol, we were working on a different product. And I think our biggest mistake was not going out to sell ourselves. After we started going out to sell ourselves for our previous company, we realized that the problem that we were solving was not as important as we thought it was to customers, and our solution wasn't what we thought it was to how the customers were seeing it. So from there, I think after we started selling, we figured out, yes, we need to pivot, we need to modify the product a little. And then after I started working with Carol, talking to customers, I think that's really the turning point for success from us, because we started working really closely with them. We talk to customers by selling to them almost every day now. And I think that has kept us from going down the path of building stuff that the market doesn't really need or want. So definitely agree with what Carol has been saying, that the most important thing is to just go out and start selling.
That's really, really cool. Amanda, could you maybe tell us about the that aha moment specifically? What was the circumstances? How did you find out? In order to pivot, like what convinced you? Was it a conversation? Like what happened?
Yeah. So there were a lot of, different factors involved. We had many conversations. So first we started reaching out to prospects, and even in that phase, we can see, what messaging is resonating, what positioning is resonating with the customers. And then after you actually start talking to them, after they want to chat with you, you start to really understand how they're seeing your solution in relation to their own circumstance. And the
Mm.
aha moment was really after we started getting on these calls with potential customers and realizing that they were comparing us to tools that we didn't compare ourselves to. They were kind of positioning the value of the product in a way that we weren't doing, and they were pointing out specific features, and they were ignoring other features that we thought were important. Um,
Mm.
so there was a whole bunch of different signals that basically led us to see that the solution that we were building wasn't right. And that's when we decided we need to pivot.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda and Carol. Last question for folks in the audience and folks watching online. Um, who should come talk to you? Who should connect with you? And what's the best way to connect with you? What's the plug? Carol, do you want to start?
I'm happy to talk to anyone that has questions or needs help with sales. Typically, I work with founders doing founder led sales at pre seed and seed companies. And I also work with Series A startups, helping founders that have transitioned from founder salespeople to founder sales managers and have a team under them. But honestly, I'm happy to talk to anyone that wants to connect or has any sales related questions. And the best way to reach me is my LinkedIn. It's just my name, which is Carol Malakasis. Yeah, happy to meet folks.
Awesome. And yeah, I gotta say after this panel, and I feel like there's so much more information to be talked about. I'm completely sold. For folks who want to talk to me, if you're interested in exploring the metaverse, if you're interested in utilizing the metaverse and its events to acquire customers, hire talent, fundraise and get investors, come talk to me. Happy to chat. We use events in the metaverse to solve business problems. Best way to contact me is email, jeremy@venue3d.com, venu3d.com. And Amanda.
Yeah, I'm also happy to, chat with any founders that have any questions about sales, any founders that are going through a pivot. Honestly, happy to connect with anyone. And the best way to reach me is either through LinkedIn, which is just my name, Amanda Zhu, or my email, which I think is above my head. It's amanda@recall.ai.
Awesome. And you can reach me over email as well. And just for the folks online, their names are up on the screen there. So if you want to type that into your LinkedIn now, you'll be able to find them. Cool. Can I get folks in the audience to hit that one key for me? Thank you, Carol and Amanda, our speakers today. Very, very informative, very interesting. I feel like there's so much more to be talked about. We'd love to connect and yeah, talk about more events like this. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Instead of doing Q&A on the stage, let's just have everybody walk off stage and we can just chat one-on-one. So if you all have any questions, feel free to come up and chat with Carol and Amanda and me as well. All right. Thank you, buddy. I'll see you next week at our meetups. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.